The anticipation continues to grow for Tennessee and Alabama going behind enemy lines once again to get a scout on the Alabama Crimson Tide. That and more coming up on your Thursday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good people, what is going on? Happy Thursday and welcome back into it. This is Locked On Vols, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Eric Kane. You can always reach me and find me on Twitter at _Kaner and at Locked On Vols. Today's episode, it is brought to you in part by BetOnline. BetOnline's got you covered this season with more props and odds and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. Guys, thank you so much for subscribing to the YouTube page, subscribing and downloading these audio podcasts, wherever you find your podcast, completely free and available on all phones and apps. Guys, we've got a crossover edition today. We got Luke Robinson locked on Bama, Chris Gordy locked on SEC. Chris Gordy will play a judge, and me and Luke will go at it as we break down Tennessee and Alabama. But also coming up later in the show, Trey Wallace, Outkick. I'm going to put that in at the very end of the show here today. I told you yesterday, got so much to get into this week. So a little bit of extended episodes, but I don't think anybody's going to be complaining about that. So again, let's get into it. This is a crossover edition. Please subscribe, please share, and please support the show. But right now, let's learn about Alabama and Tennessee, the third Saturday in October.
Joining us for a little bit of a crossover edition, we welcome in Luke Robinson of Locked On Bama, as well as Eric Kane of Locked On Vols. Fellas, good afternoon. How are you? Luke, let's start with you. Kind of give us your assessment. Here we are about the midway point of the season. Where are you on this Alabama team? Undefeated, but play with fire a couple of times already.
I think Alabama is a microcosm of the college football as a whole. I mean, there's not really a dominant team out there this year that everybody's scared of. There's not really a dominant player, I think, that's running away with the Heisman. There's a lot of ambiguity out there right now. Alabama's got a lot of question marks still, too. First and foremost, will Bryce Young play this weekend? I think he will. I think he'll be fine. But Alabama's got question marks all over the place. I mean, why does this team that's coached by Nick Saban, that has five-star defensive back talent, only have 2 interceptions and one of them by Will Anderson this year? That's kind of weird. I mean, Alabama is known for creating turnovers and scoring off those turnovers, and that just has not happened this year. I think quarterback pressure-wise, Alabama's doing fantastic. Really, defensively, Alabama's like first in a lot of categories around the SEC, but it feels like for some odd reason, the defense isn't doing as well as they should. It's just it's a hodgepodge right now with Alabama. Look, we are a spoiled fan base. So if anybody else had these statistics that probably wasn't Georgia, everybody'd be thrilled to death. Alabama fans are worried to death. And it's not justified necessarily, but I think that things are better than people believe they are. At the same time, there is certainly cause for concern.
Yeah, it's interesting. They're getting those pressures. They're just not finishing with the, monumental amount of sacks that everybody was kind of expecting from this defense this year. Eric, it's funny. I always ask you, where are you on the Vols? And it feels like every week you build up more confidence in this team. Where are you on the Vols right now?
I mean, it's hard not to be confident with the way they're playing right now, especially offensively. That does not mean that there's not question marks or there's not deficiencies, because pop on the tape and watch that Tennessee defense about every other game, and it'll give you something to worry about for sure. But great bounce back effort for that defense against LSU. LSU's not Alabama, I recognize that, but that was good to see heading into this game. But overall, I mean, it's been fun. It's been fun to cover this team so far. I mean, you've got Alabama this week, you got Georgia coming up. I mean, those are the cream of the crop, right? And you're going to see exactly how good you are. Are you really a top 5 team in the college football, like a contender right there? Do you have a chance to go to Atlanta this year? I mean, you're going to find out over the next month. So, but it's fun, man. What I tell everybody is if you have a quarterback that's playing like Hendon Hooker, you got a play caller like Josh Heupel, and that marriage just continues to to grow and blossom. I mean, you have a chance to win any football game, this one included, especially the way that Hendon is playing right now. So it's been a whole lot of fun. But again, it's Alabama this week, history, and plus just this team right here. It's a good team, and I expect obviously a pretty physical football game on Saturday.
We always like to jump into it, guys, by talking about what's the big storyline for each team heading into this game. And Luke, we'll start with you. I guess it has to be the quarterback spot. And if it is, talk a little bit about what you've seen from Jalen Milroe. And if it is him this week, have they seen enough pros and cons with him to kind of say, okay, this works and this doesn't work, and maybe they have a little bit more confidence in him if it is him or if it is Bryce Young, either way?
Yeah, the view from the nosebleeds to me was Jalen Milroe was not given the best game plan necessarily to succeed. I felt like so many times he was sitting in the pocket and he wanted to take off. It felt like he wanted to take off and run, which is probably his natural instinct. But there was something in the back of his mind that said, hey, I'm supposed to stay in this pocket and I'm supposed to see if somebody comes open. Well, me personally, I would prefer that Jalen Milroe be a one read and out guy. I mean, that's kind of what we did with Jalen Hurts, it felt like, when Jalen Hurts was a freshman in 2016, and it worked beautifully. Jalen Hurts went up to Knoxville and had a masterful game up there. So I think Jalen Milroe can be that kind of guy. I don't want to give him too much to absorb. And here's the other thing. Alabama has some nice wide receivers, but they don't have the kind of wide receivers that are going to help a quarterback out necessarily right yet. They just don't have that chemistry. So, yeah, the biggest story is if Bryce will play. And I want to preface this by saying I think Bryce will play and be fine, okay? But let's pretend he's not. Then I think Jalen Milroe was very, very nervous last week. It's one thing to come into a game against Arkansas when you're thrust into duty, you end up with a 28-0 cushion, and then you have to sort of, rely on your instincts to put the game away late. And we saw on that 77-yard run what kind of talent this kid has. But it's another thing to start off the game in what everybody had circled as the biggest game of the year. I mean, they had, several different highfalutin folks there, big recruiting weekend, CBS at night, all those things. And the bright lights were shining brightly on him. And he got a little nervous, and that is certainly understandable. I mean, I'm not saying he can't get over that, because I think every one of us would feel that way. But this is going to be a wild scene, and Knoxville's going to be bananas. I mean, they are a desperate, desperate fan base. I mean, in the nicest way possible, because they are desperate to beat Alabama. They're desperate to be relevant again. And if they get this win, they certainly will be.
Yeah, when somebody's been kicking your butt for over a decade, you want to finally stick it back to them. Eric, biggest storyline for you heading into this week? It sounds like Cedric Tillman going to be back.
The word is hungry fan base, like hungry hippo. It's hungry fan base. You see the way that the fan base supports the baseball team. It's baseball, right? I mean, that's fun. We all love baseball, at least me and Chris do. But that's not football, right? They just want a winner. Cedric Tillman. We'll see. If you would have asked me this last week, which you did, actually, you didn't ask me last week about the Alabama game. You asked me about the LSU game. I would have told you last week that I don't think Cedric Tillman would have played against LSU or Alabama. Now, that's been a week, time, and you continue to rehab, and he's approaching a month out from the injury. So, we'll see. I think it's going to be very much a game time decision. Maybe even throw him out there and warm up to see what's going on. If he does not play this week against Alabama, he will not play next week against UT Martin. And the next time you will see him is against Kentucky in 2 weeks. So we will see. That's obviously a storyline. Tennessee's done just fine without him. But again, you're talking about one of the best receivers in all of college football. You'd much rather have him there. And don't forget, he had 18 targets at Pittsburgh. He is very much Hendon Hooker's security blankets, and having him and Brew McCoy on opposite sides, two big physical specimens of wide receiver, that's what you like in this offense. So Cedric Tillman, storyline, but also another storyline, guys, that's just kind of what you were, Luke, you were kind of referencing, man. Tennessee is just, it had this stage against Florida, and it succeeded. It went down in a big-time LSU game, a sold-out crowd, 11 a.m. local time, and it whooped their butt, and they just continue to rise to the occasion. This is going to be a completely different animal because, number one, it's the best team Tennessee's seen all year. Number two, it's Alabama, which is the cream of the crop in college football. It's a team that's beat you 15 years in a row. It's a different type of challenge, but can Tennessee once again rise to that challenge and not only play football to try to win this football, play good football and try to have a chance to win, but I mean, guys, the last 5 matchups, it's been completely one-sided at the end of the game. It's moral victories here and there. I mean, Tennessee was, giving Nick Saban fits on the sideline in the fourth quarter last year in Tuscaloosa, but at the end of the day, they lost 52-24. So, can you play 4 quarters of football against one of the best teams in the country? Are you there with Josh Heupel? We're going to find out on Saturday. I think that, it should, everybody's excited, not just in Knoxville and Tuscaloosa, but around college football. It should be a really, really exciting game.
What are some of the big key matchups to watch for in this one? We'll get to that in just a second, so hang tight, guys. Real quick, I want to remind you guys about our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for football betting throughout this season. We're already halfway through. If you haven't gotten in yet, what are you waiting for? Get all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game. You can find it over at BetOnline. They continue to be your number one source for all your sports wagering information. They got live betting, up-to-the-minute scores, every sport out there. Head on over to betonline.net. You can do so on your mobile device and learn more. Friday's show, we're always breaking down all the latest BetOnline odds for all the SEC games going into the weekend. Bookmark it in your phone. It should be the first place you check every week going into all the Saturday slate of games. It is BetOnline, and it is where the game starts. Continue on here. Locked On SEC crossover edition, previewing the SEC game of the week, and it is a battle of top 10 teams. It is Alabama versus Tennessee. Luke Robinson of Locked On Bama, Eric Kane of Locked On Vols. And guys, let's get into some key matchups here. Luke, we'll start with you. What is a key matchup that you're looking for in this game? When we talk about, is it Bama's run game where Jamir Gibbs has really gotten going? Is it Bama's secondary, which has had its ups and downs? What's the key matchup you're looking for going into this matchup?
I think the easy answer is Alabama's secondary against Tennessee's wide receivers. There's no doubt about that. Look, again, Alabama has 1 interception in the secondary. That was last week. That was caused by a pressure from Chris Braswell and Terrion Arnold. Got the interception. Jordan Battle had an interception late in the game, but it was nullified by a penalty. I think Alabama's going to have to create some turnovers in this game. There's no doubt about it. But I think the better answer is probably Jamir Gibbs against Tennessee's linebackers, especially if Bryce Young plays. Then Jamir Gibbs becomes much more of a weapon out of the backfield. Love for him to have a wheel route. Love for him to have some kind of quick in where he can get the ball against a linebacker one-on-one, create some space, and then he's off to the races. He has been playing out of his mind these last couple of games. He's been playing just like we hoped he would when he transferred in from Georgia Tech. He's got, over 350 yards the last 2 games. So I don't know if he's going to eclipse 100 yards rushing again. I would love to see him do it, but I think he's more of a threat, especially if Bryce Young plays, to eclipse the 100-yard receiving mark. He is Alabama's leading receiver too.
Yeah, I was been very impressed with Jamir Gibbs these last 2 weeks. I don't know where they'd be without him, as you mentioned. 39 carries for 360 yards these past 2 weeks. But don't discount Tennessee's run game. I kind of was questioning them a week ago, and Jabari Small responded with 127 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns against LSU. So the Tennessee run game's starting to look good. Eric, key matchup you're looking for in this one?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Luke anymore there about the Jamir Gibbs. I mean, that's my number 2 matchup, so I'm going to kind of go in reverse order here. Tennessee's linebackers on Jamir Gibbs. I mean, what a mismatch. What are you going to do there, right? I mean, if you play man coverage and you run that wheel route, you're toast. You better be hoping you're playing man coverage with somebody free over the top and cover 1 because, goodness gracious, he's going to beat any linebacker in the country. So that's going to be a challenge. He's going to line up out wide in the slot in the backfield. He is absolutely one of the best players in the conference for sure. And he's, as you guys have pointed out, he's come along here in the last couple of weeks. So defending Jamir Gibbs, that's going to be top priority. But my number 1 matchup is Tennessee's offensive tackles against that man, Will Anderson Jr. The running joke on Locked On Vols this week is I have a man crush on Will Anderson Jr. I just love football, and he's a football player, and he's the best one. He's the best one out there, and it's gonna be tough. It was good warm up for Darnell Wrights and some of these guys to block B.J. Ojolari and Ollie Gay last week. But Will Anderson Jr.'s, he's much better than those guys, to put it completely frank. So can you slow him down? Can you limit him? Can the running backs get over and chip him? Can you keep a tight end in to help out? I mean, he's really good against the run as well. So limiting Will Anderson Jr., you're not going to make him a non-factor. That's just not going to happen. But just trying to slow him down a little bit. And then, of course, Gordy, like you mentioned, the run game. What Tennessee wants to do offensively, it can't do it unless you have a competent run game. Jabari Small has looked fantastic the last 2 weeks. That would obviously help out a lot.
Yeah, it was just so impressive to see Tennessee so balanced a week ago. Can they be balanced in this one? Let me just ask you this, Luke. Biggest concern for you, if you had one, in this Alabama game, outside of the quarterback, obviously, but is there one particular position that you're looking at with Alabama going, man, it hasn't lived up to where we thought it would be at this point?
That would be all receivers, including tight ends. Look, Amari Niblack had a touchdown a few games ago. Haven't seen hide nor hair of him since. Cameron Latu, been okay, I suppose, but it hadn't been what I thought it'd be. And these other receivers, they just aren't. They aren't. And again, this is unfair because they are measured against a foursome of Waddle, Ruggs, Judy, and Devontae Smith. I mean, all four of those guys are starters in the NFL. One of them won the Heisman. All of them are incredible, and these receivers are measured against them, so it's not really fair. But you would expect that one of them would have stepped up now to be sort of the go-to guy, and that just has not happened. And Bryce Young is phenomenal, arguably the best quarterback in Alabama history. He is deadly accurate. He's got everything you want, but even he needs some help every now and again. Even he needs a receiver to make a play on a ball that's thrown a little high or make a play on a ball that's thrown a little bit out of his grasp or whatever. And it just doesn't seem like that's happened just yet. I'm waiting for any receiver, any of them, and there's several of them on this team to step up. And I think it speaks volumes that Jamir Gibbs is our leading receiver right now. It should not be that way. I love Jamir Gibbs, but he shouldn't be the leading receiver right now.
Yeah, you're right. Kobe Prentice was a guy who impressed us in the spring game. I thought he was going to break out this year. We've seen spots, but again, like, who is that go-to guy? Cameron Latu, only just over 100 yards receiving. We thought he would be the big breakout tight end, season for him this year. Eric, when we look at this matchup, what's the position for the Vols that kind of makes you cringe or might keep you up at night thinking about heading into Saturday?
And Luke, I'm sorry, I was not laughing at you. I'm just laughing at the situation when you were talking, because you're exactly right. I mean, it's this first round receiver, that first round receiver, and like these guys are just like, I can only be me, right?
Yeah.
For Tennessee, even more so than a position, Hendon Hooker's been so good at protecting the football for the most part, but he had a couple fumbles against LSU. One where his freshman running back just did not pick up a blitzing safety, and he got crushed. He said earlier in the week that he actually saw the blitz coming, but he thought it was going to be taken care of, and boy, was he wrong. But he also, fumbled there, backed up in its own territory there against LSU, and the center Cooper Mays jumped on it very thankfully. So I got a hold on the football. Can't afford to give Alabama any more opportunities. But as far as positions, I mean, it's the secondary, right? I mean, Tennessee's secondary has been. You watch the tape against Florida. You watch some of the tape against, last year in the Music City Bowl and whatnot. It's very much a work in progress. You're just kind of dealing with what you're dealing with. You got two veteran safeties who've played so much football, but they're a step slow. One of those veteran safeties, and Jalen McCullough, actually had an off-the-field incident over the weekend. His status is very much in question for Saturday's game, and they've rotated at cornerback, and they've rotated at the star position a little bit this year, but they don't rotate at safety. So if McCullough can't go, I mean, are you moving Wesley Walker back there? Is it going to be Danico Slaughter? Is it Andre Turrentine, the transfer from Ohio State? Who's it going to be? We don't know, because they don't rotate the safeties whatsoever, even in big blowout games. So that's a big-time question. Kamal Hadden at cornerback, Christian Charles at cornerback, D. Williams coming in, getting some reps at cornerback. How's Tennessee going to match up against? Sure, there's not the Jerry Judys out there. There's not the Devontae Smiths out there and everything. But these receivers are starting to settle in a little bit. They're still good players. It's going to be a challenge regardless of who's throwing the football to them. So the secondary, though, it was decent against Jaden Daniels, who was throwing an awful lot, being down in that football game. They need to have a really, really good football game against Alabama.
Luke questioning the Bama receivers, Eric questioning the Vols DBs. Sounds like that's a matchup that we'll see play out on Saturday that we'll be keeping an eye on. All right, guys, coming up in just a second, we'll do our score predictions and what to watch for. That's coming your way next. All right, roll along here. Our SEC Game of the Week crossover edition. It is Alabama versus Tennessee in Knoxville. Keep hear national people say Knoxville. It's not Ville, it's full, right? Big game coming up this weekend. Luke and Eric, let's get into it.
Vol.
Yeah, Luke, let's get into it, man. Let's start with your score prediction. How do you see this one playing out?
Well, I've been debating about this. Honestly, there is a side to me that wants to pick a Tennessee win. There really is. I'm really worried about the team overall. But as it stands, I have to fall back on, if you've beaten somebody 15 in a row, you got to feel pretty good about beating them that 16th time, right? I mean, it's not – everybody loves to look at roulette, where if it's landed on black 15 times in a row, well, it's got to be red next time. No, it doesn't. I think that Alabama will win. I'm going to say 41-33. Therefore, they cover just by a half a point. I think Tennessee's certainly going to get their points. I think this is going to be a game into the fourth quarter. And look, Alabama, let's call a spade, has not played great on the road this last year and a half. This is a team that used to just dominate everybody, and they have not been awesome on the road outside of one game against Mississippi State last year. So I think the atmosphere is going to be unbelievable. I wish I could be there because I've been to several games in Knoxville. I've had a lot of fun there, even through wins and losses. It's a great venue, especially when Tennessee is good. And I think it's going to be a knockout scene. I think Game Day made the right choice going there. And but in the end, I'm not going to bet against Bryce Young ever. And I'm going to assume he's going to play, and I assume he's going to be fine. So I'll say 41-33 Bama.
I like it. It's the rare, I think, Game Day and SEC Nation both going to be there.
Yeah.
They only try to go to different places, but they're both going to be there this weekend, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Eric, score predictions, what are you watching for?
Yeah, I am not going to be the guy on the Tennessee beat that's going to pick the Vols to win this game. I don't know if there's going to be somebody else, but I'm not going to do that. And if Tennessee wins, come at me Monday morning. That's fair. It's completely fine. I've said it all week. Can Tennessee win this football game? 100%. Tennessee can absolutely win this football game. But will they? I don't know. I'm going to pick Alabama 38-31 because I've seen it. The type of program that Nick Saban's built, obviously with Bryce Young, if he plays, even if he doesn't play, I mean, you still have quality depth. You're good at the line of scrimmage. You have reserves on defense that can come in and play, especially in that secondary. I mean, good football teams, championship-winning football teams, have that type of depth that you can play in the second half and add as supplements. Tennessee, where it's still climbing and climbing and climbing, still isn't there yet. And in these type of football games, you need all that help. You need all that different looks and stuff like that. So I'm not going to be the one that picks Tennessee to win. I know some people might, but it's not going to be me. I expect a good football game. I expect Tennessee's offense to run with tempo and to give Alabama struggles early on. And then I expect Hendon Hooker to make some plays because that's what he's done his entire Tennessee career. So we will see. If Tennessee pulls it out, Knoxville will burn. It will literally burn to the ground. I was joking on our conference call last night. I'm going to be on the sideline whenever the clock hits zeroed. If it's a Tennessee win, I need to bring a helmet because it's going to be a madhouse. So I'm excited about it. I this is the first time in 7 years actually that I'm going into the weekend not going through the motions. I honestly think Tennessee can win this football game. I'm just not picking them to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's funny. You beat up on somebody so many times, like Alabama does. I mean, eventually, all that pent up energy is just ready to unload and release. And I think that's what we're going to see at Neyland Stadium on Saturday. I am taking. Look, I had Alabama losing one regular season game this year. Nearly lost in Austin. Nearly lost to A&M. They've come close. Play with fire. Still undefeated. Look, I'm going to take Tennessee because this is the toughest. This is the toughest environment that Alabama, I think, is going to walk into. I thought Arkansas would get it done on Alabama a few weeks ago when they made it 28-23. I'm like, oh, okay, here come the Razorbacks. They couldn't get it done. I think the Vols get it done 41-38, a Chase McGrath field goal late to win the game. That's how I see it playing out. Final thoughts, Eric?
Yeah, I was going to say, in order for that to happen, Tennessee, you might give up 30, you might give up 35, whatever. You've got to create more opportunities for your offense. You've got to get some takeaways. I mean, you got to force some turnovers, jump up on a football, go up and grab a football in the air. You've got to give up. You got to trade sixes for threes. You might be bad defensively, but that bend but not break mentality and create more opportunities. That is complimentary football for me in the Tennessee football team. So if Tennessee's going to win, the defense is going to have to create some of those opportunities.
Final thoughts, Luke?
I just know this. If Tennessee does win, I might drive to Knoxville because I doubt there'll be anybody with any clothes on up there, and it'd just be a sight to see. Look, again, I'm a college football fan. I'm an Alabama fan first, but I'm also a college football fan. And there are a lot of Alabama fans that look at the Tennessee game as the biggest rivalry, or at least they claim to. For me, it is Alabama-Auburn. It always will be. But and I have no problem with Tennessee necessarily. I know some people still hold a grudge against Phil Fulmer. I may not be a Phil Fulmer fan, but I've always liked it better when Tennessee is good. I appreciate this rivalry. So the fact that Tennessee is good again warms my heart a little bit. It doesn't mean I'm pulling for them. It just means, hey, I'm glad this game means something again. And I think it's going to be a ton of fun, and it's going to be really, really exciting.
And the thing to remember with this game is, as fun as it is, it doesn't mean much in terms of Atlanta. Alabama can lose this game, still beat all their West opponents and get to Atlanta. For Tennessee, they can win this game, but you still got to get past Georgia if you want to get to Atlanta. So it's fun. It won't mean much when it comes to the SEC championship game, but it is a rivalry, and it is the third Saturday in October for a reason. Guys, thanks so much for the time. This has been an SEC crossover edition previewing the game of the week, Alabama versus Tennessee.
That was some awesome stuff. You've always got to love a Locked On crossover. Really appreciate Chris Gordy and Luke for hanging out and talking this big matchup, and not only in the SEC, not only for these two fan bases, but for all of college football. I said it yesterday. I wasn't lying. These are going to be extended episodes of Locked On Vols this week because I've just got oodles and oodles of content to get in, and great people like our next guest. His name is Trey Wallace, to get into the fold and get their thoughts on this big time matchup. Trey, thank you for making the time. I know you're like me this week. It is just freaking crazy. Thanks for your time, and welcome to the show. Initial thoughts, Tennessee and Alabama. This is going to be a big one.
I'm excited for somebody that grew up in the deep south of Alabama and Mobile. I know how crazy this rivalry can be, and attending a lot of them, covering a lot of them. This is the most, in my opinion, it's the build-up's bigger than Florida, and the atmosphere is probably going to remind folks of like Woodstock '99. You know how crazy it got. It's just going to be it's going to be on a different level, and you've got two football teams that I honestly look. I think Alabama, deeper talent-wise, but you got two teams that are playing good football, and they're doing it with the stars they have on the field. And I just feel like this matchup is going to come down to the fourth quarter. I feel like this was going to be close. And it's just overall for the SEC, for college football, Tennessee and Alabama deserve to be on this stage. That's the main thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Deserve all the eyes, deserve the college game day, the SEC Nation, the sold-out crowd, all that oodles and oodles of what's coming with this game. Trey Wallace joining the show. Follow him on Twitter at @TreyWallace_. Read his work at Outkick.com. Trey, obviously the biggest storyline in this football game is the availability or lack thereof of quarterback Bryce Young. You're not a doctor. There's not going to be a public statement about if he's going to play or if he's not going to play. It's going to be if he's out there. Even if he's out there for warm-ups, hey, he might not be out there snap number one. Your thoughts on that situation, and if it's not Bryce Young, thoughts on Alabama's offense against Tennessee's defense and the ability to keep up with this offense. And I still think Tennessee will score in this football game.
If it's not Bryce Young, let's start there. If it's not Bryce Young, this works out in Tennessee's favor because I feel like Jalen Milroe just did. I look at his numbers from last week, and that's fine, the touchdowns and whatnot. But I think that he struggles throwing the ball down the field. And for a Tennessee secondary that has struggled at times as well and could be without one of their starters this weekend, that would line up perfectly, in my opinion, for Tennessee. But the biggest, the biggest caveat to that is you're going to have to throw a linebacker on him. You're going to have to throw a spy on him and pay attention because he can get outside the pocket and he can make plays down the field. I think that's the biggest thing. With Bryce Young, completely changes the story. But and here's what I was talking with somebody the other day down at Alabama, and their biggest concern would be, okay, Bryce Young goes out there and plays. Well, in that first corner, Rodney Garner, Brian Jean Mary, linebackers coach, they're going to be sending the dogs on Bryce Young and trying to put him on his rear end a number of times in the first quarter. So I say that to say this. If Bryce starts, I wonder how long he even lasts in the football game with an arm that, man, he's looking at it, barely being able to throw passes 50 yards down the field. He's practiced this week a little bit over the last 2 days. But I'm very interested to see how they roll this out there because it's almost like the same situation that's going on in Kentucky right now. Like Will Levis can do certain things, but he's not going to be able to run the football this weekend. So you look at Bryce Young and what they're going through, it's just a tough spot for them. And there's no way to get around it besides him playing with pain. And I think that's what it's going to come down to on Saturday.
And I mean, it's, I've said this all week. Well, first and foremost, I mean, this is the first time in 7 years Tennessee goes into this matchup actually with an opportunity to win the football game. Will it win the football game? I don't know, but it can 100%. If I'm Nick Saban, Trey, I'm sitting here thinking, I need Young to win this football game. Now, Alabama can certainly still win it without him, but it's a lot to risk, in my opinion, if you were to sit him and say you lose this football game. Alabama's got to obviously get back to Atlanta, win that game, and then go to the college football playoff. You don't have a built-in loss somewhere to kind of help you out here. It's just a lot at stake with this opportunity or with this situation with Bryce Young, who, if he does get out there, as you pointed out, Tennessee's got to be aggressive because he will not be anywhere near 100%.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, too, is, and this is going to sound offbeat for the game this weekend, but there's still a scenario where both teams can afford an L. And I think that's something to pay attention to. Alabama can technically afford an L, but they'd have to run the table. So and you have to look at tiebreakers. So I think you have to just kind of throw that out there this weekend where if my guy can go and my quarterback says he can play, then you're going to have to put him out there, but you have to be very, very cautious with him because that first or second hit, then he's done, like you were talking about, he's done for the rest of the season. There's no coming back from that. And Alabama has aspirations for a national championship, just like Tennessee has aspirations for. But Tennessee's not dealing with a quarterback situation right now, especially a starter. So I think that kind of it goes into what Alabama's going to do game plan wise. And to be honest with you, I could see Alabama doubling up on Saturday, running Jalen and then also having Bryce play. I think if it comes down to it, Bill O'Brien, Saban, they're going to do whatever they have to do to score points. And it could be a spot where, they run two quarterbacks.
What is an underrated matchup in this football game? Could be from the Tennessee side or from the Alabama side, from, whichever one gets that advantage, that we're not really paying attention to, that we should be paying more attention to, saying, hey, if this group or this player does this, this team, has a real good chance of winning.
I think I honestly think it's going to come down to the running backs being able to block for Tennessee. That's huge to me. Jabari Small, Jalen Wright, we can go down the list. Sampson, if he's available, whatever. But the guys being able to block, because you're going to have Will Anderson coming off that edge. You're going to have, Toa trying to get through the middle, get after the quarterback. The biggest thing to me is having that extra blocker for Hendon Hooker when they decide to spread out the field and go deep. you got to have him enough time in the pocket. You got to give him enough time. So how do the running backs play in that scenario when it comes to locking down that defender that comes at them? I think that's something to watch. I know it's kind of off base, but I think that, even the running game in general, that's fine. But to me, it's how much time that they give him and Hooker. And look, it starts up front with your offensive line. Gerald Mincey probably going to be back this weekend for Tennessee at left tackle. So you have options there. And then to me, it comes down to just how much time, can Jabari Small, pick off Will Anderson Jr. when he's coming around that edge, looking for blood. So I think that's something I'm paying attention to.
Easier said than done. 100%. Dallas Turner on the other side as well. A really, really good player. All right. So last one I got for you. It's a two-parter. First and foremost, the biggest game in Neyland Stadium since when?
Oh, boy. I would probably have to go, if we're just looking at it atmosphere-wise and build up, 98 Florida. Maybe that one. I even hate to go back that far. There have been some fun games. But of this like Oklahoma, Tennessee was not of this magnitude. Now, the environment might feel the same on Saturday inside the stadium, but it wasn't of this magnitude. So I think that, just Tennessee, Florida, probably then. You could probably go 96 as well. I mean, it's a tough one. And it's a tough one because Tennessee and Alabama, in my opinion, haven't played a meaningful game like this in a very long time. We came close to it when it was 2016. If Tennessee would have taken care of Texas A&M on the road, that would have been an interesting matchup with an undefeated Tennessee team, undefeated Alabama team. But this is the biggest game. And then in talking with folks, I mean, Eric, they're thinking maybe over 160, 170,000 fans on campus Saturday. So Neyland only holds 100. So it's going to be a wild atmosphere on Saturday, and the buildup will be insane over the next couple of days.
2016, both teams still ranked inside the top 10, but it would have been the first time since 1989, both top 10 teams who were undefeated. But now that's this matchup. This is the first matchup. Both these teams are undefeated, ranked inside the top 10 since 1989. Okay, and the last thing, and again, this is wrapping up a Thursday show. Trey, you might have a piece coming out tomorrow or Saturday morning on this, and if you do, feel free to tell me to go shove it. But if you have a score prediction, I'd love to hear it, and/or how do you see this thing playing out?
I think I can go ahead and give it to you. If it's coming out then, and my stuff will be coming out right around the same time. So, No, I think Tennessee actually gets it done through the air. I think they spread Alabama out a little bit, which opens up some run game options for Tennessee. I think Tennessee's defense is going to try to punish Bryce Young if he is in the game and get him out of the game as soon as possible, which would put everything on Jalen Milroe on the road. A lot of variables in that sentence right there. But I just overall looking at it, I think Tennessee's offense is clicking too much right now. I'm going, Tennessee 38, Alabama 31. We'll see if that ends up playing out. But I think Tennessee pulls off the upset and breaks the streak this weekend.
You are the second individual that I have interviewed today who has already given Tennessee the win. So that's I
just think this is not like other times. This is not like any other Tennessee-Alabama matchup. And I think, honestly, I think that when people start realizing that and put the past in the past and don't figure that into a score, I think if you just look at both teams, Tennessee's offense is producing at a high level right now. If Tennessee's defense holds up like they did last week against LSU, then I think that's when you're going to see the Tennessee offense, outshine Alabama at the end. And again, it all comes down to how much Bryce Young actually plays. So Tennessee wins the game, in my opinion.
And again, what you're talking about is something I struggle with too. Austin Price and I were talking about it on the field after LSU, saying, hey, we need to start treating this team like the top 10 team that it is. I mean, for real. So,
and it's difficult for some people, and I completely understand that. But you can't hide it anymore. I'll end it with this. The Florida game was like a test to get over like a hump. You know what I mean? Okay, Tennessee's hanging around. You know, they look kind of good. The offense, going to LSU and winning the way they did, that was a statement that said, hey, guys, we're here.
Yeah.
We're not going anywhere. So that's how I took it.
Trey, you got tons of stuff coming up later today on a Thursday, tomorrow on a Friday, and plenty of stuff on Saturday over at Outkick. Anything you want to promo?
Yeah, just lots of great coverage, scene setter piece coming out on Friday. We'll have predictions and then coverage just like you all through the weekend on Saturday at Neyland Stadium. So I look forward to it. I appreciate you having me on, buddy. And as usual, hopefully we get a good game.
That's indeed, my friend. I will see you there. Thanks so much, Trey.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you.
All right, great stuff there from Trey Wallace. As always, read his work and follow him on Twitter at Trey Wallace _ and really, really good reporter for college football. Does a fantastic job. All right, jam-packed Thursday show. We crossed it over with our guy Luke and our guy Chris Gordy, Locked on Bama, Locked on SEC. Hope you guys enjoyed that. And we got Trey Wallace in here of Outkick. Got my official preview and stance and everything else of that likes coming up tomorrow on the show. Boogie Bentley will join me as well. We'll probably have another guest on the show. So really, really looking forward to tying a bow on preparations for Alabama. That is coming up on tomorrow's show. Guys, thanks so much. As always, Locked on SEC this week, Locked on Bama. Make that your second and your third listen. But Locked on Vols, #1 listen each and every day. Please subscribe, pound that like button on YouTube if you wouldn't care. And you can always follow us, find us anywhere you possibly can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey app, all those places. Subscribe there as well. Your support of the show, it is not going unnoticed. We're having a massive year, a massive football season, and hey, a good football team helps with that as well. Guys, thank you so much. We'll tie a bow on prep tomorrow for Tennessee and Alabama. This has been Locked on Vols.